Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to go over the JustDoorToolZ MARK1. It's what's called a door maintenance or repair kit, and this is the kit right here, well, almost all of it. A very large tackle box full of thousands of different screws and fasteners. All of this together, the entire MARK1 weighs 30 pounds. So when you're ordering this, what you're ordering is 30 pounds of hardware that you would use specifically when you are maintaining, repairing, installing commercial doors. And the purpose of this video is to be able to determine, is it worth it? It's very expensive, and the purpose of the video is to show you what's in the case, but the point I'd like to arrive at is whether or not I would make a recommendation based on the contents of the box, my experience of having been out in the field, knowing what installers generally encounter, and whether or not it would be a useful investment. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each component of the case in one by one. And we're going to preface each segment with just a definition of what we're going to be going over in terms of what's inside the case or where in the case we're going to focus on. And we're going to work our way through the entire case. There are 5 items that don't fit in the case, and we'll go over those at the very end. And let's first take a look at photographs of everything, and then we'll start our piece-by-piece review. Let's do that now. So we're going to start this off by looking at the description of the item. Here's a factory-provided image. JustDoorToolZ MARK1, door maintenance and repair kit for fire doors and non-rated doors. And they give a generic listing of what's here. Door maintenance and repair kit for fire and non-rated doors. Hard to find bits, tips, taps, door and hardware screws. So about that sentence there, generally what that means is the associated paraphernalia that you're going to use when it comes to door work. You're usually dealing with industry-specific fasteners, thread sizes, lengths of bolts, and other special features as it pertains to all of that material. For as an example, the obvious, easiest example would be that hinge screws, template machine screws for hinges or hinge screws, they would have an undercut head. That is not a typical feature that you'd find on a flathead screw. So our industry has lots of specialty fasteners or facets that are unusual to an otherwise possibly common fastener. So the point they're making here is hard to find materials included in here, which is standard for us, but for the rest of the industry, it's not standard. Special 1224 or number 12 self-drilling hinge screws with a special undercut head. Self-drilling number 6 kick plate screws that require a special kick plate head. Specialty self-drilling screws for closers, exits, weather stripping, and astragals. VIX bits are included. We're going to go over that. I had said thousands, but apparently there's 1,800 screws alone. There is a screw extractor set, 100 shims for both rated and non-rated doors, a door wedge, really handy when you need to get the door lifted off the ground slightly, a door pressure gauge, a gap gauge, drills and taps, a 1, 2, and 3 set of insert tips, door silencers, Bertha's butt wax, we'll go over that, in its own sturdy carrying case. The thread or the drilling lubricant, which is Bertha's butt wax, the pressure gauge, the screw extractor, the gap gauge. The gap gauge is included in the tackle box. The pressure gauge, the gap gauge, the lubricant, the screw extractors. There's also an illuminator that's here that's not included in the case. So you would really need an additional case, I think, to go along with this, perhaps, because of these extra items. Now, in the extended description, there is this listing of everything that's included. So as we go through all the pieces, if I don't know exactly how many are in a package, refer to this chart. That's going to be here. Refer to this chart. Okay. So let's look at some photographs that we have of this material. Let's take a look at photographs that we have of all of this material. There's everything that you get. The case, the drilling wax, screw extractors, door pressure gauge, an illuminator, a door wedge. The case alone, the case alone, up-close images showing the different compartments. Here's the handle for reference, but we're going to go through it in a similar logical path. And another set of images. Just close-up views. There should be a total of 6 of these. That looks like it's a duplicate. Screw extractor kit. All of the items that aren't included in the tackle box. Okay, let's dive into going through the components inside the tackle box right now. The first section of the kit that we're going to go over is going to be right here. We'll start right down in this section. So let's do that, and as we go through them, we'll cross them off. All right, let's dive into what's in that bin. So let's go over that very first bin that we're dealing with, and here it is. It's there are 3 bins that are this double wide size, so that comes right literally out of the cart. I'm going to pull everything out of here, and we're going to go over what's included in this, and we'll put everything back in as we go through. Okay, so in no particular order, here's what we're dealing with. Phillips long bits, number 1. So these are bit drivers. You've got a total of 4 and a number 1 point. Too long, and then 2 extra long is how I would call those. Then we have number 2 bit drivers. Again, Phillips. 2 long and 2 extra long. We then have number 3s. 2 long, 2 extra long. They're all hex shank, 1/4 inch hex shank. Now, why you would need these is because a number 2 bit driver is really common. They're all common, but number 2s, well, first of all, number 3s you're going to use for your hinge screws. Always. Almost always. Sometimes you'll encounter an offshore manufactured hinge screw that will take a number 2, but they're always almost always number 3, whether it be machine or wood screw. So you'll find number 3 bit drivers necessary. Number 2s are going to go on your lock sets. You know, the bolts that hold locks together, latch bolt screws, things of that nature. Those 3s are more than hinge screws. They are door closer bolts, they are strike plate bolts, etc. 2s and 3s. The number 1s, I'm thinking probably the cam on the back of a mortise cylinder would be a good application for a number 1, although that might be slightly smaller than a 1. But a 1 should work on the back of that. So really handy to have those bits. Why longer? Because sometimes you can't get the head of your tool down to the item itself. So if you imagine a modern style door closer, you know, the typical Norton 1600 series and every clone of it ever made, you know, that body's got a projection of about 3 inch. Well, you can't get the head of your drill to it. Well, you're supposed to be doing it by hand, right? Rather than have your tool go in on an angle and try to drive that screw, what you're going to absolutely want to do is have a bit extension. So that would be an example of where you'd see those. Let's go to, there are 2 packages of shims that are here. There are, I can tell that these are the steel ones because they're heavy. There's a package of steel shims here, and there's a package of plastic shims. These are just thin pieces of metal or plastic with a self-adhesive back, and these are going to allow you to obviously pad that hinge off of the reinforcement, whether it be the door or the frame. If you are working on fire-rated doors, do not use the plastic ones. Only use steel on fire-rated doors. because it's not permissible to use anything other than steel shims on fire doors. Your non-fire rated doors, you can have use these pieces of plastic shims. They're probably about 3/16 wide. They're likely about 60 thousandths thick, something in that range, and very typical and common when what you're trying to do is simply balance the margin between the jamb and the door, either on the hinge side or on the strike side of the jamb. So steel for fire rated doors and plastic for otherwise. Let's go on to the next item. So the next item we have is going to be what's called a gap gauge. Gap gauges are used to obviously determine whether or not you have immediately or quickly determine whether or not you have a permissible gap between the header and the top of the door, you know, the jambs, the strike, the hinge jamb of the door, and that's indicated with what you're measuring there. 1/4, 3/8, 3/16, 1/16, 1/8. And all you got to do is go up to the door and stick that in there, and if it fits, you've got at least that much gap. Go to the next bigger size, stick that in there. If it doesn't fit, well, you know you're below that. Fire door and egress assembly door inspectors this will be in their tool apron. This will be in their back pocket when you're immediately testing gaps between doors, because NFPA 80 absolutely defines maximum permissible gaps between the edge of the door and the frame, jambs and header, for both steel and wood doors. There were, it may have evolved, there were at least 3 occupancy types that required, per NFPA 80, the standard, annual inspections for fire doors. Hospitals are one of those occupancies. And in certain situations, in order to continue to get funding, they have to prove that their fire doors are functioning per code. And there's a list of more than 12 points that a fire door and egress assembly inspector is looking for. Gaps are certainly likely the first thing that's being checked. Then what we have is a package of combination drill taps. Now, I don't use these only because I've never used them. I've always used a drill bit and then a tap. But that's what that combination looks like. This is going to be a 1/4 20 drill bit with a integrated tap. Okay, it's going to allow you to create those tapped holes in one operation rather than 2. There is 1 each of 4 sizes, biggest to smallest: 1/4 20, 12/24, 10/24, 8/32. 1/4 20 is going to be for your door closers, very common. 12/24, obviously hinged template machine screws. I'm sorry, 12/24 for template machine screws. 10/24 is going to be pretty common for hardware like exit devices. It's not unusual to find a 10/24 bolt for the head case of an exit device. 8/32, that's clearly going to be for strike plate screws, latch bolt screws for cylindrical locks or tubular locks. So 1 each of those. Now, the next item that's here. The next item that we have is a bit unusual. It's a repair plate, really, is what it is. It has a self-adhesive back on it. It's a piece of steel that has 4 holes in it, and and it has self-drilling screws that are included. What the manufacturer is certainly thinking about you doing is encountering a situation where you have damage on a frame. Okay, and what you need to do is to get a piece of steel that's been attached to good portions of the frame, either parallel arm or regular arm or top jamb, whatever you're dealing with this piece of steel is what it is. It's not an awful idea at all. You're going to get plenty of fasteners to attach your plate to the, most likely the frame, but it could be the door as well, and then additional screws to attach to this, whatever you're attaching. So there's probably at least 9 in here. Well, there should be 9. There's 8. Some parallel arm brackets have 5 holes. The one they're showing has 4, but some have 5. So I may amend that. I would suggest the manufacturer amend that to include 9 total screws. But nonetheless, that's really great. I haven't had a need to actually use a plate like this, but I have we've all encountered a situation where the frame is no longer has the proper integrity to allow you to attach hardware to. Now, the final things in that bin are what are called VIX bits, V-I-X. If you know that name or the term VIX bit, you know exactly what this is. If you've never heard of it, you're going to love this. If you do door work, you need to buy one of these. You need to have this. So what happens in the world of hardware is you need to pre-drill holes for screws. In all instances, you would be pre-drilling holes. I can't think of an instance when you wouldn't be. I mean, I get it that someone is likely with a kick plate may not pre-drill a hole, but that's just the wrong way to do it. The issue with pre-drilling holes is getting that drill bit exactly where you want it. That's the whole issue with it. Getting it centered exactly in that right place. That's always the trick. In NFPA 80, it literally states that holes in wood fire doors must be pre-drilled. There is in the style of a wood fire door, there's a veneer. Now, veneer can be 30 thousandths. Veneer can be a 1/4 inch. It's just something applied to something else. Veneer, the style of a wood fire door can be edge banding. No matter what's there, underneath it is the material that I would know as Tectonite. It would be, well, I believe it's Tectonite. Or what it's called today is probably a different name. My information goes back a little bit further. It is a very dense, milky, cloudy, white, gray color material that's extremely brittle. That it's fragile material. That's what you put the screws into. The material has good screw withdrawal strength, there's no doubt, but unless you pre-drill the hole for it, for that wood screw, you're going to split that style, and now you no longer have a fire door. What the VIX bit does is it allows you, before you hang that door, you place the hinge on there, the VIX bit allows you to center the tool exactly in the countersink. And this end is connected, that's 3/8, that end is connected to your drill bit, and as you center it, and I have to do it this way to show it to you, and you push, the drill bit comes out, and it gives you the proper diameter of bit for the pre-drill and the proper location. The only time you can kind of do it wrong is if you're really trying to do it at an angle, but when you push down, it kind of forces you to center it. No matter what, this tool is going to be useful to you, whether it be in door work or in just rough carpentry. I'm doing a large project right now where I'm building hundreds of feet of shelving out of 2x4s, and I'm using a certain sort of connector or post connector, and I need to drill the hole so I can run the screw into it, but constantly the screw is off center. I grab my VIX bit, put that on my drill, and I'm always finding the perfect center to that hole that's in the galvanized steel fence connector when I'm attaching these pieces of wood. So if you ever need to pre-drill a hole, think about a VIX bit, because it will give you, for that screw size, there's a 12 and a 5 in here, but there are other sizes that JustDoorToolZ has. They probably have 4 different sizes. It will give you a proper diameter of hole that you're pre-drilling and a much more accurate centering of that as well. Those bits can be changed. There's a couple of set screws there, so they will dull with time, things of that nature. Awesome. We're now going to move on to the very next bin. Let's do that now. Okay, here's the bin that we just finished. Let's go on to this bin right here. Excellent. Let's do this one right here. Okay, here's the next bin that we're going to get into now from JustDoorToolZ. Let's take a look. Yeah. So this is the next bin. It has 4 pouches in it. Let's discover what these pouches are all about. We'll put that right back where it goes. Ouch. Okay, very good. There are 4 packages of machine screws that are going to be used typically for hinges and for 4 7/8 strikes. If you have an application that requires a 1224 machine screw, this bin is probably going to have everything in it that you need. Now the first pack, and I believe it's 100, 1224 flat undercut head stainless steel, 1/2 inch in length. But they're also thread forming. So as we said initially, fasteners for our industry are generally, they're typical fasteners, but there are facets about them facets of them that are unusual. So this is a screw for a hinge that's going to go onto a metal door or a metal frame, something that's been drilled and tapped for this. But the immediate unusual feature is that tip of that screw is strange. It's what we call thread forming. Okay, I'll explain that in a moment. It has an undercut head, so it's a flathead screw, therefore it's countersunk, but underneath it's clipped. It's making it a flat head that's undercut, meaning if that wasn't undercut, the overall height of the head of the screw would be too great to allow it to be flush with whatever you're attaching, like a hinge or a strike plate. So they'll undercut it. That's going to be a number 3 Phillips. Again, 1224. Now thread forming. Thread forming is really important. Somewhere in someone's installation instructions, it's going to say all holes need to be drilled and tapped when you're using template machine screws. You have to drill and tap those holes. The manufacturer of the hollow metal door and frame, what they're doing is, when they are painting the material, the doors, the frames, everything, the way that I've seen it is that there is a long conveyor line, very long. You're going to have an overhead conveyor system that has hooks hanging down. You're going to hang the material on the hook like jam pieces. That conveyor system takes the material through. Part of the section it will hit will be the spray booth, where paint is just being sprayed on the material. Other sections of the conveyor are going to be cooling, loading and unloading, obviously the spraying, spraying, cooling, loading, unloading, just transfer points would be my guess as well. But when they're spraying that paint, the paint is getting on the threads of the reinforcements. The factory is not going back and clearing out those threads. That's your job. Most people do not do that because they're relying on thread forming screws, and that's the entire purpose of thread forming screws, that they're meant to clear the paint out. Are you to take a die and clear out the paint on those threads? Absolutely, every single time. Thread forming screws are meant to combat in those instances when it's not been. So stainless steel, okay, pack of 100 of these. The next package, same screw, this time just zinc. So steel-based zinc is what that's going to be. Same screw. After that, same type of screw, black, but this time they're 3/4 inch long and they're not thread forming. Probably that's the case because they are undercut, they are 1224. It could be that they can't get black screws without perhaps an epic minimum order requirement that have the thread forming end to it, and maybe in 1/2 inch length. So black screws, 3/4 inch versus 1/2 inch, probably not going to cause a problem. Your reinforcements, your dust boxes welded behind your reinforcements probably are far enough away to tolerate a 3/4 inch screw, but that black one's going to be 3/4 inch. Now the last package here, brass. 1224 flat undercut, 1/2 inch long in a brass finish. They're going to be steel. They're certainly going to be steel, but they're just a brass tone. These are not thread forming. I can see that they're not. So be mindful, these are just 1224 flat undercut head. All these are a number 3 Phillips, as you would find normally, on hinge screws. Again, well, I say hinge screws, but you would use them for like a 1224, pardon me, you use it for a 4 7/8 or an ANSI strike in a hollow metal frame is where you're going to see 1224 threads. Other places as well, but when you think 1224, you're thinking hinges. And then after that, you're thinking ANSI strikes. Let's move on to the next bin in this kit. Okay, here is the unit that we just covered, or the bin we just covered. Now, let's move on to, well, let's just work methodically. Let's move on to this bin right here, is what we're going to do. Let's take a look at that one. Okay, let's go through the next bin. In here we have just 3 packages of screws. Let's check this out, see what we're dealing with here. These are all machine screws. Let's take a look at what they're what they are. 1224 flat or undercut flathead zinc 1-inch. So these are 1-inch screws. It's a 1224 flat undercut head in a 1-inch length. So the standard length is 1/2 inch for hinge screws, ASA strike screws. Could there be an instance where you need or want a longer screw? Yeah, there could be. I don't encounter it very often. And there's the same package here in stainless steel, 1-inch long, 1224 undercut flathead. Again, the head of the drill or the screwdriver needing to get to the workpiece, it might help to have a longer screw, perhaps. It could be that you are installing hardware onto something that is thicker than average, meaning the hardware is thicker. So what I'm thinking of is perhaps you're taking a detention hinge. Stanley makes their BB-855, their BB-852, and while 1224 wouldn't be the right diameter for that, you could certainly want a thicker screw because the hinge itself is going to be 3/8 of an inch thick. So if you've got a 1/2 inch screw, well, that's not going to work very well. If you're dealing with Zero's 90, I think it's their Z9500, their cam lift hinges, those hinge leafs are a 1/4 inch. You're going to want more penetration into the reinforcing plate than a 1/4 inch. So you'd want to go with a longer screw. Sometimes repair work just requires a longer screw is really what the bottom line is. Now another instance that you might want a longer screw could be if you were attaching something down and you were using a riv nut. A riv nut is an anchor that is intended to go over a thin wall of material like 1/8 inch aluminum. So let's imagine that you were installing corrugated steel over windows in a hurricane area. You could drill, I realize it's not a door example, but it could be a door example. You're drilling holes into the aluminum windows and then you're going to install a riv nut into it. Well, you might need 3/8 of an inch to get through your corrugated metal. You know, there might be a rubber washer. And then you're going to need to run that deeper into the aluminum structure to catch the threads so that you can tighten it and crush or collapse the riv nut over the wall of the aluminum. Why you have a 1-inch? Could be you'll realize you need 1 inch when all you have is 1/2 inch. That's when you're going to need it. When you least think you'll need it, that's when you're going to need it. There's then finally in that bin a third and final package, hinge and strike SDST, maybe self-drilling stainless screws, 12x1s. This is what people are going to call tech screws or self-drilling screws. These are number 12, 1-inch length, drill points, flat undercut head. You're installing continuous geared aluminum hinges. This is going to be great for that. You're not taking the time to drill each hole, tap each hole. You're using a self-drilling screw like this. There's a difference between self-tapping and self-drilling. Self-tapping is just a point. Self-drilling is when there's literally a drill tip to it, like you'd see on a drill bit. Self-drilling screws are really common for lots of hardware, whether it be door closers or hinges. Kick plates can have self-drilling or tech screws. Weather stripping can have tech screws. And that is going to be most likely for continuous hinges. Let's move on to the next bin. Okay, the bin we just finished is this one here. Let's move to this bin right here. And we'll have just over a third of the kit done. Let's move to that bin. Okay, that next bin, it has 7 pouches in it. Let's go over what is in these 7 pouches. Let's do that right now. These look like they're wood screws is what they look like. Actually, let's do them in a somewhat organized fashion. Okay. back to the self-drilling tech screws. Here is a package of number 14 screws with a number 10 undercut flathead to replace number 12 wallowed out hinge or strike screws, 7/8 in length. So these are tech screws, except that they're certainly a specialty screw. You're not going to easily find this anywhere, and I think that's the theme that we're encountering with the MARK1. There's fasteners in here that you're just not going to roll up to the local home improvement center and get. Self-drilling screws that have a thicker body, but yet with the standard size head. Where you would use that is in retrofit work, where you have a damaged or a compromised hole for a screw. I'm thinking of a Hager, of a Adams Wright reinforcing pivot. A reinforcing pivot is used when you have a door where the top hinge is thoroughly compromised. Maybe not the hinge, but more so the reinforcing plate in the frame or the door to the point where it's broken. And field welding is not permissible. So there is a full surface reinforcing pivot where part of it attaches to the header, the other part attaches to the door, and there's a pin. And that allows you to bring the door back up, shim it in place your anchoring pivot on there, mark your holes, and install that reinforcing pivot. At that point, the blown out top hinge is less of a situation, is less of a problem. In a situation where that sort of installation over years also becomes compromised, those screws will have to come out, and because now the holes are wallowed out, or they're oblong, they're damaged or compromised, you're going to want a thicker body, a greater diameter body, but the hardware is still prepped for a size 12 head on the screw. So this is the perfect confluence of being able to install that material. Okay, that's what this is for. Now, there appears to be just wood screws everywhere else here. So in a reasonably organized fashion, and sticking with the theme of a size 14 body and a size 12 head, all right, let's go for it. So we have two packages here of hinge and strike screws. We've got a package that's zinc, and I'll put those aside. And then we have a package that's stainless steel. These are number 12 screws, 1.25 inches. Okay, that's what these are. These are typical number 12 by 1.25 inches. Well, number 12 by 1.25 inches threaded to the head wood screws. If you look in NFPA 80 for fire-rated wood doors, the passage is going to say number 12 threaded to the head 1.25 inches wood screws. This is the exact screw required per the NFPA 80 standard. If the standard has been adopted by your local code, then that's code. It is certainly code that you'll need this exact screw for a wood fire door installation. Now we have 3 packages that are number 14 bodies with number 12 heads, 1 3/8 inches in length. We have 2 packages that are nickel. If that screw looks a little odd in terms of its size, it's because it's a size 14 body with a number 12 head. The head looks a little bit smaller than normal. They're in a nickel finish, which means they're made of steel. Okay, so we've got 2 packages of these. Then we have a package of the same screw and a zinc, or what they call yellow zinc. I would call this zinc dichromate. It's like a brass type color. Number 14 body, size 12 head, 1 3/8 inches long. Okay, so if you have a wood fire door where the holes are wallowed out, you can go with a thicker body, and it is slightly longer. Now Now you've got trouble with a wood door that's not fire rated, or maybe it is, I suppose, but you just need a longer screw. Well, here comes a package of number 12 stainless 2-inch long. Where you would use a 2-inch long wood screw like this is simply going to be where you have damage to the wood frame and you just need to sink it in deeper, or you're going to sink it in deep enough where it's actually hitting the stud behind the jamb is what the deal is with that. An application or an instance where you'll see that is a pair of wood doors, and over time the active door, which is used constantly, that top hinge, because it carries 70% of the weight of the door, starts to tip into the opening. The screws literally start to come loose in those applications. They do, where you need to tighten it up. Well, what happens is someone may elect to tighten it up, or maybe not. Let's say you tighten it up. Well, you tighten it up, and 2 years later, sure enough, that screw is loose again. You tighten it up again, but as you continue to do that, you're damaging the integrity of the wood itself. Or you don't tighten it up, and that just leads to more severe use. Well, the door doesn't close right away. Let's just push it harder. That makes it all worse. To the point where now the door is really coming in. That screw now is literally coming out because the threads are completely damaged. What will solve that? A longer screw. One with the same diameter body, but nonetheless a longer screw. So that would be an example of when you would use a 2-inch long screw. Okay, let's now take a look at our next bin. Let's identify the next bin in this video. Okay, here is the bin that we just went over right here. Let's go over this bin right now. Doesn't look to be too much in there, but that's the one we're going to move to. Okay, let's go over the next bin. There are 3 packages in here. And let's take a look at what those are. So we've got the first random package that I've just picked up. This says Hinge and Strike self-drilling stainless screws. These are a 1024 screw with a modified undercut flathead for hinges and strikes. Okay, so I don't know of strikes that take a 1024 thread. It doesn't mean they don't exist. I know the people at JustDoorToolZ have years, if not decades, of field experience, but the bottom line is this is a tech screw that's a 1024. I encounter 1024 when I'm doing exit devices, holding the heads on of exit devices. You know what? And someone might just want to take that tech screw and just zip it in there and be done with it. And there you go. This is a 1024 undercut flathead 1-inch long tech screw. So that's going to be in that bin. In spirit of the same screw is the same screw, except this one okay. So this is a 1024. That's a machine screw. This is a number 10 self-drilling screw. Okay. Doesn't have 24 threads per inch, so it's not a machine screw. This is just a self-drilling screw. That's a number 10 body, 1-inch length in stainless steel. So that's what that is. Okay. Put that one aside. Let's go to the final package, more tech screws. So these are 1224 tech screws is what they are. Flat undercut head, self-drilling stainless steel, typical number 3, typical self-drilling screw. This screw is something that you're going to use. If you do door work, you're going to end up using hundreds or thousands of these on an annual basis. These are really expensive screws is the bottom line. So this is something you'll probably be reaching for a lot more often. Okay. Let's identify the next bin that we're going to go to and continue to move on. Okay, we have just covered this bin as we continue to make our way through the kit. Let's now go on to this middle bin here and let's see what treasures it holds. And the next bin that we're diving into is more of the same. We've got 2 packages of wood screws. we have a package that are number 10 screws for wood doors, stainless steel, 1 inch long. So this is a number 10 screw. A number 10 screw is going to be typical when you're using hinges that require a number 10 screw. You know, not commercial size hinges, maybe a 3x3, maybe something residential in nature is going to require a number 10 screw. There's also a second package that is identified as hinge and strike screws, number 10 by 1 inch, stainless steel. So they do appear to be the same screw, so I can't indicate exactly what the difference between these would be. They're both number 10s, they're both 1 inch, they're both indicated as stainless steel, and they're both indicated as for wood doors and frames, but the orange package just says for wood doors. But I can't tell you the difference between, so it's a number 10 screw. That'll have to remain a mystery in terms of why they're in there, why you would use a number 10 screw. The third package in the box is a 1024 flat undercut head, 1 inch self-drilling zinc screw. So more Tech screws. These are 1024s. So Tech machine screws with a flat undercut head. There it is, a package of those. Let's move on to the next bin. Okay, we have covered this center bin. Let's move on to this bin here. Let's take a look and see what's right here. Okay, turning on to our 7th bin. Looking at this, attempting to look at this logically rather than randomly. Okay, so I've got 2 packages of 1224 self-drilling Tech screws. They're 1224, they're 5/8 long. We've got a package of stainless, we've got a package of nickel. Let's just take a look at them. Here's the nickel. Flat undercut head, number 1224. Yeah, 1224. Tech screws is really what they are. These you're going to chew up all the time. Absolutely. You're doing full surface aluminum continuous geared hinges. you're gonna take these like popcorn at a movie. That's the bottom line. 5/8 in length, very typical, very common. Again, these are not inexpensive screws, but locating a self-drilling 1224 flat undercut head, that's going to be a challenge. So that's pretty valuable. Then we have a package of stainless steel, same material, just 11/16 now, not 5/8. So a 1/16 of an inch longer. I can't think of an application where that 11/16 exactly is going to come in play. I don't do enough field work to say, yeah, the 5/8 is too short. I need a little bit longer screw. So, but this is clearly an instance where you'll need a little longer screw. So there you go, 11/16. Then the last one, same scenario, 1224 flat undercut head self-drilling screw. It's stainless steel, but these are 3/4 long. So a little bit longer this time. Okay, again, where you would use a 5/8 versus an 11/16 versus 3/4, your experience in the field will dictate that. Self-drilling 1224 flat undercut head screws, very typical, very common, and that type of screw is by far the most common repair maintenance screw that we're going to sell people who are working on doors. We stock thousands of those screws in different finishes and sizes at all times. Let's move on to the very next bin as we turn the corner. Okay, here is the bin we just finished. Let's go up here. Let's take a look at what's in here. Might be more logical to continue this way, but we'll go up here. I've already drawn it. Let's see what's in this bin. Looks like some wood plugs. Let's do that right now. Okay, moving to the next bin. In this bin, there are 3 pouches of wood plugs, is what they are. And you may not encounter these very often, but they are extremely helpful at solving problems. So we're going to get 1/8 of an inch size. Okay, tapered wood plug. We're going to get a 3/16 inch size. And we're going to get a 1/4 inch size. Okay. Now, what these are for is, well, first of all, fire door work. If you are working on a fire door and you have a wallowed out hole again, a hole that's just not holding the screw, you need to fill that with like material. Is what you need to do. To fill that hole, you would use like material. And when I have a hole that's stripped, I will take a dowel, or in this case these tapered plugs. These are dowels that are just tapered end is all that they are. And I will clean I would clean the hole with a drill bit. I would make that a uniform size. I'd put a caliper on here and make sure of what size I needed to drill. Speaking about drilling, I would also own what would be really handy as an amendment to a kit like this, or a second level of what you should have in terms of your tools, would be a drill index set. A set of drill bits that are not fractional but drill index, because the incremental spacing on those is far more convenient for getting as close as possible to the root size of what you need to drill. Like the drill bit size for a 1224 tap is not a, don't quote me, but it's not a 3/16. It's really a drill. It's a numbered drill size, because those are much finer in increment between each other. So whether or not you would really need that for this, but numbered or a drill index size of drill bits is really handy to have. So you have to fill a hole with like material. If you're doing a steel door, you can put a steel bolt, nut and bolt to close off the hole, let's say if you're switching door closers. But if you're doing work on a door and it has an exit device and one of those holes, it's stripped, well, what you would do is drill a hole, clean it out, insert one of these plugs, and render it nice and flush to the finish. You would probably want to cut the plug maybe with a very fine saw before you hammered it in. You don't want to try to jam the whole item in there, even though, well, your experience and mileage may vary, but the length of the dowel or the plug will need to be taken into account. You'll get that, well, glue, first of all. You'll get that plug in there, wipe that clean, make sure it's nice and flush. Once that sets, the next day, let's say, you go back and you drill a brand new hole and you've started over pretty well. I was doing a job one time on a stile and rail wood door, 3'6" by 8'0", Baldwin mortise trim. It may have been wasn't a Victoria, maybe a Versailles, and that's like an 18-inch, very ornate trim on the outside of this lock. Very beautiful. The inside had a really beautiful trim, escutcheon, and a lever. Well, when the person installed the escutcheon, they drilled the holes too big for the number 5 solid brass slotted antique nickel wood screws, oval head wood screws. And that trim over time, because you only have 4 of these small brass screws in a Sapele door, you're turning that lever over time. You're going to kick that trim ever so slightly, and it will ovalize that hole, and it will need repair sooner or later. The screw will get loose. Take the trim off. Take your small plugs, whatever plug is necessary, clean all of them out, repack all of them, all 4 of them. Let that set overnight, come back, drill the holes with the proper size, and then you're really in good shape. Now, in terms of what size hole to drill for a screw, the way I was taught is you would pre-drill the diameter of the body of the screw itself. So not the threads, you take into account the body. But I've learned later that it's actually smaller than that. Maybe 70% of that or 85% of that. depending on, is it hardwood or softwood. So it's softwood, you're going to go closer to, you'll do, don't quote me, you'll have to look it up, but let's say 75% of that. So you've got a little tighter fit in a softwood like pine. But if you're doing a hardwood like maple, you're going to need to drill it slightly larger. So when you're taking the root size of a screw and putting a caliper on it and then trying to calculate 83% of that, whatever the math actually is for that, you're going to want the wired drill bit size is just the point. So these plugs are really helpful at just closing off holes. You had a closer on the door that was a Doramatic SC81. I think that has a 12-inch center to center. Well, someone's gone back and put the Doramatic SC61 on it, which is 9 1/16 center to center. You got a couple of holes left over. You're going to need to clear those off. Now, this 1/4-inch size may work. It might be a little small. You might need a slightly larger dowel. But filling it with dowels is the bottom line. And sooner or later, if you do door work, you're going to explore doweling closed a hole that normally took a screw. So they package some of these in there, and they're handy to have. I don't do that kind of work often, but if you're going to do a job and you're going to do it completely, correctly, professionally, cleanly, plugs like this, tapered dowel plugs, it's really the way to go. Why you would want these is because they're already tapered for you. When I do dowel work, I generally don't worry about them being tapered, but I can tell you that having one tapered in my mind's eye would certainly be more appropriate in terms of getting it in the door. And I would add to that second level of tools, obviously in the locksmithing world, there are very small mallets that are not metal. They are rawhide, they are rubber. You're going to want striking tools like that that will leave very little mark. And if you're doing work like this, it's always handy to have a clean block of wood. Put your dowel in and then take your block of wood, maybe with some wax paper underneath it, and just slightly tap that in so that you're getting it really nice and flat. Anyway, let's move on and determine what our next bin is, and thank you. This is the bin that we have just finished.
How many of them do you need?
And let's just clear off this one here in the corner and see what's in here next. Awesome, let's do that. Okay, the next bin in our series, we're getting down to it. Okay, some odds and ends. Okay, Nito Toledo. We have some, they're called door silencers, or mutes, or rubber bumpers, or those rubbers. I've heard it called. Clients have come in and said, hey, do you have those rubbers for the metal frames? Here it is. This is a silencer that you'll insert into a hollow metal frame. Generally, an insertion tool is nice to have. We do stock insertion tools. An 8-penny finish nail, a blunt end 8-penny finish nail would probably work really well for that. When you insert these, you don't want to just push straight hard. You'll poke through it. Kind of work in a circular fashion and kind of tip it in, tip it in, tip it in. You'll get it in. Hollow metal frames are always going to have a hole for a mute unless that frame was ordered specifically so that it was muted. It was not included. I would order hollow metal frames when I'm specifying a job or I'm working on a job and I know there's going to be gasketing on it. I'm not having them drill holes in the frame for mutes. The gasketing's going to do that job. It's going to do two jobs. It'll stop the door where it needs to stop and it'll seal. I don't know who JustDoorToolZ gets this from. This could be an Ives SR64, a Rockwood 608, a Donjo 1608. I think it burns 501, and lots of other people make these. I don't know how many are here, but probably 50, I would guess. Nice to have. Really nice to have. There is a set of instructions here. Okay, let's take a look. So this set of instructions that are here, I'm not exactly sure what these are. Just door clips for wallowed or stripped out latches on hollow metal doors. 2 sizes available, CZ1 and CZ2 for cylindrical and full mortise. Simply place clip Z in position as shown, then install the lock. Okay, well that's neat. We've got a number 12 and a number 8. So that tells me that we're dealing with a mortise lock, an ASA strike, or the number 8 is telling me that we're dealing with a cylindrical lock, tubular lock, deadbolt that would take a number 8 screw. Let's look at the number 12 as an example because it's slightly larger. I've never used this. I have never seen this before, actually. Yeah, sure. So what this is going to allow you to do, it's a spring clip is what it is. This is obviously going to fit over the tab, assuming the metal is still there, but it's been compromised. The hole is stripped. You can't use a larger screw because you can't get the reduced head diameter and a thicker body. That's what this kit is full of. And the thickness of this spring clip is so nominal it wouldn't make a difference. So you'll just clip that down and you'll be able to run that screw right into that, right through that tab that's there. So that's pretty neat. I've never used these, but can certainly see the need for them. That's to be sure. Maybe 12 in each package. That's an unusual number. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah, about 12 in each package. And those instructions are loose because of the 2 different sizes that they have available. Let's take a look at what's coming up next. So this is the bin that we just cleared off. Let's do this last big one right here.
Fortunately, I don't have any left in prime code.
Let's check this one out. Let's do that. Okay, this third to last bin is actually rather heavy, but it only has 4 packages of screws in it. So let's go over what's in that third to last bin. Okay, really easy. There's 2 packages each of 2-inch and 2 packages each of 3-inch door closer screws. Number 14, self-drilling, self-tapping zinc. Both packages in 2-inch are zinc. Sorry. So you have to be mindful, I guess, of what you're installing this down to. It's 2-inch long. Any typical door closer that you're going to use, the mounting ears of a typical Norton 1600, a Yale 51 series, whatever it is this will work just fine for. You're doing a new installation for a door closer. You're going to get up there, you're going to mark your holes for the closer, probably center punch the holes, get that body up there, and then run that tech screw right into it, or that self-drilling screw. So that's going to be a number 14. That's going to be typical for your door closer bodies. 2 packages in 2-inch. And 2 packages in 3-inch. The 3-inch, that's going to be a good length screw to use for your LCN 40, the 4000 series, the Norton 7500 series, Yale 4400, and all other closer bodies that will be at least 1.25 inches thick in terms of its mounting, what you're going to go through. It's just nice to have those screws, and the fact of the matter is, it's nice to have these screws because you might be the door installer. You're not the supplier, you're not the distributor, you're not the contractor, you're just the person who's been hired to install all of it, and you don't want to deal with drilling and tapping. You don't. The self-drilling points on those screws are really well suited, not for only getting through the 18, 16 gauge steel that you're going into, but the closer reinforcement, that's for sure, the 10 gauge closer reinforcement that's going to be behind the steel. So that self-drilling tip is good for that. It's that approach with having self-drilling screws is how many installers personally like to do it. I don't, because I find that I can't control the screw very well when I'm trying to get it, push enough force to get it to actually drill into the metal, but get that straight and get it through. So that's not my preferred approach, but I know that my opinion is in the minority of opinions regarding that. So those screws are nice. Door closer bodies, using it for arm shoes, you could. It shouldn't be a problem with the 2-inch, even though it probably is going to be a problem because your arm shoe's not thick enough. Your parallel arm brackets, if you're putting those onto the soffit, those would technically work if you were running them into the soffit. Self-drilling screws become really expensive when you buy them, but I imagine you're calculating how much time it's going to take for you to drill those holes, tap all those holes, even though manufacturers' installation instructions may call out that approach. But most, if not all, door closer manufacturers are also going to have, self-drilling screws possibly as an option, or some will, no doubt. That just handles it. Let's move on to the second to last bin in our Mark 1. So this is the bin that we just completed. Let's move on to this bin right here. Let's see what's inside that. Okay, the second to last bin has 2 pouches in it. It has, they're different, they're similar but different, a package of hinge and strike screws, 1224 zinc 11/16 self-drilling. So self-drilling, number 12, 1224, flat undercut head tech screws or self-drilling screws, a package of these. You're going to use these all the time, is the bottom line. It seems to me that we've already had some of these in the package, so I can't explain why we're necessarily seeing that again, but we're seeing it again. Then, we've got a package of closer screws, this time a number 14 self-drilling zinc in a 1-inch length. Okay. Again, strikes me as something that we've seen before. This is going to be really great for parallel arm brackets, is the bottom line. This is what I'm thinking about for parallel arm brackets. A flathead screw, number 14, self-drilling, ready to roll. Okay, ready to roll. We're going to move to the final bin now. Let's take a look at the final bin in the Mark 1. Okay, this is the bin that we just completed. Now, let's tackle this last one. Looks like there's a handful of items in here. Let's look and see what's in this one. Okay, let's go over the last bin that's actually in the case. Then after this, we're going to touch on the 5 additional products. 6 pouches are in here. And what's nice about, I'll tell you, I don't pretend to tell JustDoorToolZ what their business is, but it would be kind of neat if these bins had the slip-in dividers. I'll even say this. This is Mark 1. Let's go with Mark 2. Slip-in dividers that are labeled. It would be really nice to know what's there. So maybe that's a Mark 2, if there is such a thing. Let's divide these out in terms of what we're dealing with. Okay. Astragal screws, kick plate screws, weather stripping screws, latch screws for wood doors and frames, latch screws for metal doors and frames. So, latch screws for wood doors and frames, latch screws for metal doors and frames. The difference obviously is going to be, one's going to be a machine thread, the other is going to be a wood thread. Typical 832. This is 3/4 inch. It's a little longer than necessary, but not so much so. Latch bolts for cylindrical locks, tubular locks, deadbolts, D strikes, T strikes. That's going to use this 832. Okay, very typical. That's in stainless steel. Let's put that one aside. Wood screws. That's going to be a number 8, 3/4 wood screw. Stainless steel. They've got it in. Yeah, stainless steel. Those would be a number 2 Phillips drive, is what those both are. That's normal for that. Then we have weather stripping screws. Okay, sure, weather stripping screws. This would be for perimeter gasketing. Number 6 self-drillers. They're in stainless. So it's a number 6 pan head screw with a self-drilling point, or tech screws. These are, if you're doing weather stripping and someone wants tech screws, this is what they want. Drilling point. Heads of screws, flathead. That's pretty easy to understand. It's a flathead. You've got round head. Round head is like half of a circle. Pan head looks like a frying pan upside down, where it's straight up and then comes together like that. And then oval head. It is a elliptical sort of shape to the head of the screw, just FYI. So the weather stripping screws, those go in there. Then we have astragal screws. Astragal screws are going to be, these are probably number 6 flat undercut head self-drillers. They might be 8. What does it say? Yeah, it's a number 8. It's an 818 self-drilling flat undercut head, zinc 1/2 inch screw that you'll use for astragals, for steel astragals, whether it be a flat astragal, a wraparound, a two-piece, a conversion, or an H-style. Hollow metal doors and frames with steel astragals. They're going to use a flat head. Not in all instances. You can do offset bars and round or in pan head, where meaning they're not countersunk. It would be nice to have some of these screws actually. A Mark II kit might include this same screw in a pan head. I would suggest that they have pan head for these as well, because if your astragal is not countersunk, and many are, but not all are, they're just punched for the hole, you would want to use, you're either going to countersink them or you're going to use a round pan head screw. We have kick plate screws. We have them for wood doors and metal doors. The difference being is one has a tech point, a drill point on it. Okay, they're all number 6. They're 1/2 inch. They're stainless steel. You've got your wood door, and that's just a the one head I didn't mention was a truss head. A truss head is just a much wider round head screw. It's got a larger diameter head, and it's because what you're installing might be thin. You might want a larger diameter head to spread out the force of the screw so that you're not crimping or denting something. So are these properly called truss head? Possibly. I would call it a truss head, or at least I would refer to it as not having a typical round head. Kick plate screws can be oval head very commonly as well, because you can do a small countersink on kick plates, but generally they're not countersunk, but they can be countersunk, so that will dictate what you're working on. Then the last package in the Mark I kit is the same truss head style screw with a self-drilling point on it. Okay, and really common, you're putting on armor plates. You know, you don't have the screws, you need to just make quick work of it. The screws that came with the protection plate. Protection plates are mop plates, stretcher plates, kick plates, armor plates, and those words all mean something different on a piece of flat architectural metal, whether it be aluminum or stainless or brass or bronze or plastic or laminate, whatever it is. Installers are going to get the hardware and look at those screws and say, I'm not using these. Give me my tech screws. Give me my self-drillers, and just zip, 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 zip is how they go. Not the right way to do it, per se, but you sure see it all the time. Screws like this are really expensive in the sense of comparing it to what a screw costs, and are in that final bin. So what we're doing now is we're gonna look at the final 5 items that are in this kit, and we're gonna keep moving. Okay, we have completed this last bin. Good for us. Let's now take a look at these other items. Bear with me one moment. Okay, let's look at these final items. Let's do that now. Here we are in the home stretch. There's a screw extractor set that's included, and you're going to use this all the time, especially on hinge screws. They get rusted in place. They get stripped. They get stripped even when you're installing them. They get stripped. This screw extractor kit is from CTD Consolidated Magnum Super Premium Drill Bits, made in USA. So, and these sizes are on here. Got a number 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, and then the fractional sizes are there. You know, obviously what you're looking to do is to take the number 3 set, probably very common. Likely what you're going to end up doing is, it's Friday, it's 4 o'clock, you know, you're already supposed to leave at 3 o'clock, and that screw's got to come out. It's got to be replaced. You don't want to leave it for Monday. So you've got a rusted screw in a hollow metal installation, exterior opening, or it's just stripped. Hopefully it's not stainless. You're going to drill the center of that out, and then you're going to put this into your drill bit and into your drill, And that screw extractor, it's meant, once you've collapsed the center of the unit, the center of the screw, well, drilling a hole is going to allow it to collapse. This is intended to get the now permanently damaged screw out of the reinforcement without damaging the threads. And that's really the key. Not damaging the threads, because you have to go back into that hole with something. And if you did, you might have a number 14 body with a number 12 head screw in here somewhere. So it's really handy to have these. And if you don't have a screw extractor kit, and I say this because I've done it without in the past. I don't know that I gave you the sizes. Let's just stare at that for a moment. 3/32, 1/8, 3/16, 1/4 inch, 5/16. Those are the drill bit sizes. So I'd be down in the number 2, number 3 range for my, depending on what I was doing, for my screws, my number 8s, my number 12s. Probably getting into the number 4 size if I'm working on a door closer. I don't want to damage the threads at all, because that makes a much bigger problem. What I was about to say was I've needed to remove screws. I didn't have a screw extractor set. I did have drill bits. I could drill through that, and then you can kind of force a tool in there, you know, basically damaging your screwdriver to begin with. So the screw extractor set is really the way to go, and that's included with this Mark 1. Okay, let's go on to the next item that is accessory to our Mark 1. Okay, we have covered the screw extractor that's here. And I think what we'll do is we'll just go on, we'll go clockwise through this. We'll go to this, what I believe is an illuminator. I've never taken it out of the packaging. I may not be able to. It might be sealed, but we'll take a look. This is the next item we're going to look at. Okay, the next item that we're going after is this illuminator. It is a LED flashlight, it is what it appears to be. Luckily, and it appears to be articulating as well. We can get that open. Oh yeah. Clip, apparently. Shirt pocket situation. That obviously articulates. Okay, a little decal there, no big deal. Oof, on button. Oof, it's bright. It does rotate. Let's take a look. It's nice to be able to spread some light into an area of where. Got a magnet at this end. I can see that. That's pretty handy. So it's a multi-tool is what it is. A hook, you've got a magnet. Yeah. Okay, yeah, you can rotate this. Let's try that. Now it appears as if that's what it was. I was testing it. It was a turn it on and then a hold allowed me to illuminate the end of that. Obviously there's probably instructions here somewhere. But you know how we are as field technicians, I suppose. One more hit on that and that turns that off. So one to get that, okay, and then one off. I didn't realize that it was turning on when I had tested it earlier. And that, and obviously batteries. Kickstand. I know that you can't see that very well, but it stays up, so you can articulate this. Based on the size, it sure looks like we're dealing with AA batteries. 220 lumen task light, and then 80 lumen spotlight. 2 modes is what it's called. Very good. Runtime 7 to 21 hours for 80 lumens on the spotlight, 5 to 15 hours on the task light. Rotating directional lighting, non-slip rubber coating. Absolutely, you can feel that it's non-slip rubber coating. Single button operation, water and impact resistant, powerful magnetic base. Pocket clip. They say hanging clip and kickstand. I'm going to say that hanging clip and kickstand is what it is. Lighting instructions. I don't think we're going to be able to get the camera to focus on that. Press button 1 time to activate task light. Press twice to activate the spotlight. Press again to turn off. Dimmable beam. Each light mode is fully dimmable. Hold button for 1.5 seconds to activate dimming function. I did not try that. On. Oh yeah! Yeah, it dimmed right off. Comes bright again. Dims and holds. Interesting. Spotlight, then off. Awesome. Dimmable. Okay. Light will dim from 100% to 10% over a 3-second period. The light will flash quickly when it reaches 10 or 100% to indicate that it has reached its minimum or maximum value. It did seem to me that it flashed. Release button at any time to achieve desired brightness. Right, we did that. Light will continue to dim brighten until the button is released. Dim, brighten, dim, brighten. Double tap the button to activate memory power settings. Task light will activate. Follow dimming instructions to adjust to the desired brightness. Press button again to move to the next setting. Light will cycle through each light mode sequentially. Set each light mode to the desired brightness. If 100% brightness is desired, amongst light modes, simply press the button to move to the next light mode. Press again to turn off. Doesn't tell me the battery type, but it's got to be AA's. It's just too large for anything but AA. Yeah, a couple of small screws that are here. I imagine that's where you're going to get access to your batteries. It's not, you know, they indicate here the battery symbol, but I don't see any way that this is coming off. So I would say that those 2 screws is how that is done. So you may want to toss some batteries in your MARK1 as well if you believe you're going to end up using this light illuminator often. That'd be another thing to add, a couple of spare batteries. I always carry them, especially for ear protection that I will wear when it's powered. I do have a set of powered units that are noise canceling in the ears and in the microphone. Let's move on to the next item. Okay, we are done with the spotlight. Let's move on to now this door wedge. Everybody needs a door wedge at some point. Let's take a look and see what this one's all about. Okay, the next item is the door wedge. This is a piece of some sort of rubberized material. Seems quite durable. Concave in its shape. That could also be very helpful. Overall length, about 5 1/8. Overall width, about 3 1/4. Obviously, it's going to go down from about 0 right here at the edge. Overall height over here looks like it's about 1 1/8. In the center, looks like it's about 7/8 of an inch. Okay. A purple color and jam is on there. I'm not sure exactly what that means. But the bottom line is where you would use a wedge is... So the height of this wedge is really conducive for standard undercuts or clearances from the bottom of the door to the top of the finished floor. The hard part about hanging a door by yourself is, if this is the hinge side, having your hand on the hinge side and getting that close enough to the jamb to get the knuckles of the hinge to interact to the point where you can kind of scoot it up. But if you could get the door to 90 degree and already get the door tipped up and resting on this wedge, which does not seem like it would aggravate the surface of a wood door at all. I wouldn't slide a metal door over this or place it on top of there. You can then take that door that's tipped up here with the wedge here. You can then tip that up and get the hinge barrels to mate, where you can then tap your hinge pins down. So that would be a really great usage of this wedge. Obviously, it's going to be used, I might want more than one of these. It'd be really handy to use this when you are you've got a door. You need to get it in place because you're going to use full surface hinges, maybe a piano hinge. Or you've got a door. You need to get the door in place to margin the jamb that you're going to build around it. You've got to get the door set. The example actually where I use this most frequently, and I don't do it often, but I do it enough to know, is you've got a client with an aluminum storefront and they've got pivots and they've failed, and you're installing a full surface continuous geared aluminum hinge. All you need to do with that sucker is get the door in place, shim it, slap that hinge on there, place the hinge on there, mark your holes, and just use your screws and get after it. You can do that job really quick, but you've got to get the door elevated off the floor first. So what a door wedge can be used for, countless things. I like the fact that it's concave because I can roll that door a little bit in such a way that how I exactly position that is going to take advantage of that concave nature. Let's go on to the next item. Okay, we have gone over the wedge. Strangely fulfilling to be able to X off the work that we've already done. Let's go to the wax. Odd name. Let's go to that now. So here's the wax. I had a customer in the late 90s who ordered from us steel doors and frames and hardware. Like every 3 days he was in for doors and frames. And he discovered material like this. It wasn't this, it was in a stick. It was in a square stick, and he would basically just get that on his drill bit, and he swore that it substantially increased the life expectancy of his material. I have used smoother drilling, tapping, and screwing. Absolutely. I have used this, not this brand. I can't tell you that it wasn't this brand. It wasn't branded this. And it wasn't the panacea that he made it out to be, but it was substantially effective at allowing me to lengthen the life of my drill bits. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I would most definitely conduct experiments with this. Your mileage may vary, and see if that's the case, but I do believe you're going to find that this will be something that you use. Now, why this over traditional thread cutting fluid? Thread cutting fluid gets everywhere. It's more of a cleanup with thread cutting fluid. I use thread cutting fluid when I'm tapping holes, drilling, etc. to keep the bit cool. I do, but there's a lot of cleanup involved. You might like this dry sort of drilling, cutting, tapping lubricant. So I would be very grateful for any feedback that you can give me about your experience on this material. Let us now move to the very final item in the set. Alright, Bertha's butt wax has been wiped clean off of our task. Our force gauge. Now the force gauge is going to go along with your door gap gauge as well, being a field tool that you can use. Let's take a look at the force gauge. Okay, door pressure gauge. If you're going to be a door guy, you're going to need this. It's set to 0. So basically there are, and you've got a little rubber O-ring, and that allows you to place this on the stem and it will set the value for you. So you get that pushed down. And there are a lot more sophisticated, expensive force gauges. I own one. You can spend hundreds of dollars on a digital force gauge or a torque gauge as well. But this will allow you to, when testing for ADA compliance, you're going to place this on a specific area on the door. Think of where you would probably put your hand on the door, and you're going to push that door to its full open or 90 degree, and you're going to be able to see where that ring sets itself. So right now I think it's at about 8 pounds is where that is just set, just random. And this is a very easy way to know whether or not a door is compliant. Guaranteed accurate readings. Right down here it tells you what your permitted door or opening force, ADA accessibility guidelines, interior hinge doors, maximum 5 pounds, same with sliding doors. Operating instructions. It's pretty obvious, but I would certainly read this. Used by building fire code inspectors, building and fire code inspectors, architects and contractors, building maintenance engineers, elevator engineers, commercial door and hardware professionals is where you're going to use this. I don't know that I have this one, but I do have a force gauge, because a customer will need to know if their openings are handicap compliant. That's number one. Number two, I've also used it in the sense of I've had a client where we rebuilt for the client pocket holder should you want. I've rebuilt for the client, yeah, rubber end. That may be a magnet there. No, it's not. We rebuilt for the client door closers. That's one thing that we do, and I may have mentioned this previously. And he says the closer doesn't get the door to the closed position. Why is that? Doesn't have enough force. I said, well, okay, we're going to have to test that. Overhead closer, a Husky shotgun, double acting. Put a 18-inch crescent wrench on there. Use that long crescent wrench to get it to 90 degree, and then have it close. While one person holds the Husky, I've got my force gauge. And I can tell in the last 10 degrees, there's a lot of force that it's pushing with. Because I had said to the client, is there a air pressure problem? Do you have a lot of air movement preventing that door from closing? Absolutely not. No way, Jose. And I'm telling him, I'm measuring 13 pounds of force. There must be a mechanical issue. There must be a misalignment. The door must be making contact somewhere, because it's showing me 13 pounds of force. That's adequate to get your door closed. And in fact, that's a lot of pounds of force for a door. So, and obviously where you measure that along, but we were measuring it within reason of the width of the door on that crescent wrench. So we knew that we were getting a substantial amount of force out of it, but the point of the matter is you use the tool to find those answers. Is that door handicap compliant? It's either yes or no. You've got the tool. Okay, so really handy to have this. So that concludes all of the parts that are included. Let's hop back to the screen view and finish off this video, and then we'll really finish it off. Okay. That concludes the Mark 1 tackle box and all of the associated items. Let's take a final switch to our item profile. So we have page 1 of what's included. We have page 2 of what's included. I don't see anything here that we're missing. Just doing a quick overview of what I'm seeing here. Well, we'll make a determination in a moment about whether or not we agree that this is worthwhile. There is, before we finish this up on screen, on camera, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page here, where you can pull up not only all of the Just Door tools that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation here, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Obviously, much of this manufacturer's catalog we've just gone over as a result of going through this Mark 1. I can tell you that the door lifter, the door dolly, the door stand, those are good items if you're doing work on doors. A door lifter is also nice to have. You can have the wedge, but this allows you, there are times when that wedge just isn't going to work. The door is too heavy and you need a real lever to lift it, like a lead line door. Door dollies, that door lifter is there. Other items. Templates. If we're selling something just door tools, it's probably a door closer template. These templates are really nice. They're smart. They're durable. They make sense. If you're installing one door closer, fine. If you're installing 50, you're really going to want one of these, or 2 of them. Templates, you can review those. I have videos on that material. Here are your VIX bits. That'll show you more of what's going on. We discussed that at length. That's the result that you're trying to achieve. There are your tapered dowels. Other smart tools. A strap for the top of the door. A very ingenious person came up with these ideas. There are your steel and plastic shims so that you can shim a door. You can cant a door. Change its relationship to the face of the stop. Gives you an idea of what you're looking for in terms of shimming. We're about halfway through the catalog. Hinge tweakers, or tools that will allow you to re-swag a hinge, are here if you need to change that swag, the bend on the hinge leaf. Door pressure gauge, gap gauge, that's in your kit. Bertha's material, it's here, it's odor free, it is. That's what that's looking like. That repair tool, that's in there as well. That repair plate. Templates for latches and locks and strikes, showing how it's used. Routers are used for doing that. More of that material. Frame dimpler, I've sold these before. That allows you to create a 3/8 countersink in your jamb when you're using a flathead sleeve anchor, or maybe a number 24 wood screw. We've got a mortiser here for making a pocket in the edge of a wood door. I have no experience with this, centering your jamb on a stud. I'll be very curious to find out from you if you've used that. Frame spreader. You know, the bars that are welded to the bottom of a jamb, those are just transportation bars. That doesn't mean the frame is true plumb level and square. Temporary door lock. They don't make this. I think a fella in New York is responsible for this. Ingenious item when you need to have a construction lockup. where you've got the permanent door installed, but you don't want the permanent lock installed. This will allow you to control who comes and goes to that, and you can do it in either a push or a pull application. Training tools, I guess. I'm not familiar with that from them, and that's the whole catalog. Really quick, on the shims, I want to just draw your attention to the Steel Door Institute's website. Yeah, it's not it. steeldoor.org. So the Steel Door Institute, has technical documents or standards. ANSI SDI documents. You are absolutely going to want to review these free documents. They're the industry standards that every manufacturer draws on. Standards for swinging doors. Okay, let's look at it in PDF form. This gives you a tremendous encyclopedic overview of how to handle doors and frames, meaning how to interface with them. You'll see language like this involved in construction documents, specifications, levels of doors, level and model. I draw on this all the time because I don't remember what a level 3 model 2 is. I need to look that up. Methods about how to go about shimming materials also in these documents. It talks about what is appropriate for handling doors and frames on a job site, etc. So all of these standards are here at no charge for you to draw on. You're going to absolutely want to be able to get to these at some point. Standards, technical data series. Yeah. Manufacturing tolerances for steel doors and frames. Installation troubleshooting guide for doors and frames. That's really what I was looking for. You're out in the field, you are going to want to read this. Clearance at bottom of door too small. Frame set out of square. Frame loose on drywall. You get the idea that this is really important stuff. They talk about shimming. I mentioned changing the swag on a hinge leaf. That's the swag. How to shim a door. How to correct a door when it's not shimmed correctly. So this technical document, in my opinion, belongs in the MARK1 kit. And this is free. This is no charge. This is right off the Steel Door Institute website. So really, really, really valuable. When you have a problem with doors and frames in the field and everyone's pointing fingers, this is going to be the governing document. So if you're involved, you better make sure that you are compliant with everything in here. And if you are, then you're good. And I'm only halfway through the document. It just goes on and on. I know that I've read this. I've referred to it countless times over my career. Let us wrap up this video on camera. In conclusion, this video covered everything in the MARK1 maintenance kit for fire-rated and non-fire-rated doors from JustDoorToolZ. I can tell you that JustDoorToolZ is a straightforward, no-nonsense company. You send them a PO, and within a couple of days, you generally have a tracking number. And you really come to appreciate those vendors, those suppliers, those distributors, manufacturers, those customers, that it just all fits together like a nice dovetail joint. It just comes together, and they really do that really, really well. Clean product when it arrives, well manufactured, backed by people who know the material, that designed it, that engineered it, that built it, all based on actual field experience. So, if you have any questions on the JustDoorToolZ MARK1 door maintenance and repair kit or any other JustDoorToolZ product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you. So the question that we've been wondering about through the entire video, is the kit worth purchasing? And we've gone through every piece. We've identified every item in the kit. And I can tell you that there's nothing in the kit that I wouldn't eventually use. I would use all of it. There are items in the kit that I would exhaust pretty quickly, meaning there are items in there that are going to be more day-to-day. There will be items there that won't be day-to-day. But I can honestly say, for me, I could see myself eventually needing everything inside of that kit. And the question becomes is the kit worth the money, is the bottom line. And I would say if you are someone who... There are three possible answers: yes, no, and maybe. The no just is because, why would it be no? For me, it would be no because you don't need 80% of the type of fasteners or solutions that are in the box. You're just not going to use them. You're not going to use the plugs. You're not going to use the 3-inch self-drilling drywall screws. You're not going to use the pressure gauge. You're not going to use, some of the colors of the tech screws, the brass, or I should say the machine screws, maybe the black. The yes, so you're just not going to use them, and it's cheaper and more appropriate for you to buy only those fasteners from us that you know you're going to need. The 1224 tech screws, maybe the size 14 body with the size 12 head wood screws. The yes is because, if it's a yes, it's because you are in the field all day long, every day. This is what you do. You go out and fix problems. If that's what you are, it's a lot of money, but it's the cost of the kit is really compared against the cost of the time of not quickly moving on to the next problem. So this kit, while it's expensive, what you're really not spending money on when you spend it on this is your time. Time. You can order more screws, but what you can't order is more time. So if it's a yes, absolutely yes, because you're doing that type of field repair maintenance work constantly. If it's a maybe, you can understand. If it's a maybe, you can understand the value of all the parts in there, and you say to yourself, yeah, I'm probably going to end up, I could see me possibly using that. I haven't had a job where I've needed to use that yet, but I can see that I'll possibly need to. That would be an option. Or you're just someone who says, that is a cool kit, I have to have that. There are those of us out there that would say that. So whether or not it's worthwhile, the value of what's in the kit is worthwhile. That math adds up. Those screws are extremely expensive. They're specialty screws. They're not sold in huge volumes in the sense of a 1/4-20, round head machine bolt with a 1/4-20, nut and a 1/4-inch flat washer. So it's not commodity material. Oversized body, smaller heads, unusual screws for our industry. So the math adds up. But if you can justify the usage, then it makes sense. I would recommend to JustDoorToolZ the improvements that I had, or upgrades I had mentioned earlier. It would be nice to have a tackle box that would allow me to segregate my pieces, because this is a time saver, but right now it's not saving me a lot of time when I'm not sure where all my parts are. Maybe they need to identify the underside of the lid. Something needs to be done to dress it up, or my suggestion is that when you get the kit, take time with a small little label maker and label everything so that you can find everything you need. But those bins should have separators in them, and it needs to be durable enough. When you slide the separators into plastic, they need to hold so that when you take the case from flat and hold it by its handle, they all don't collapse and mix with each other. That's what you have to prevent. So the client who bought this, they're a hospital. They are literally an outfit that is dealing with this on a daily basis. So it makes sense that they would have this, because they are not only obligated, they're mandated to have proper, up-to-code functioning fire doors. Self-closing, self-latching, proper margins, proper fasteners, proper preparations, nothing violating the integrity of how the door is approved to be listed and labeled as a fire door. And other resources that I might suggest that they somehow not include, because NFPA 80 and NFPA 101 are not free documents, but somehow access to those two standards, NFPA 80, NFPA 101. Under NFPA, there are several standards. You might bump into 252 as it pertains to electrical codes. You might bump into, or electrical components as a category, I suppose. You might bump into other requirements that you get into all the time. So that would be really handy. Again, that SDI document, that's something you need to bookmark. That would be nice to have in there as well. So there's lots of ways that this can be made into a Mark II and a Mark III, but I thank JustDoorToolZ for making it available to begin with. It's a phenomenal kit that it's very likely you're going to find immediate use for, because if you found this video, you're already looking for it. So here it is. Thank you very much. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.